Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Trending in Hollywood, right here on the Hollywood Critics Association YouTube channel. So, you may have noticed that we have not been doing the shows as frequently as usual. So, let's just kind of clear that up right now, and let's just openly admit that we will
How are we
probably
clearing this up? Oops.
we will
I
probably be
lost you.
doing this until the next beginning of, I should say, until the beginning of the year, where we will probably be doing Demetri cannot hear me is based on what his reaction is, and looking at his face right now, he cannot hear me. So I will go to my one camera mode. But it is award season. It has been very busy.
There
There's
you
been
go.
tons of screenings. There's been a lot of stuff happening. So therefore, we will be doing this show probably every other week moving forward until the new year. And then, just kind of give you a heads up. So, like, if you're like, why aren't they on this Friday? It's because there's a lot of stuff happening. And, we've got our nominations going out pretty soon, which will be the next time we will do the show. So there's a lot of stuff happening. So just keep in mind that's the reason why it's been kind of hit or miss here on the show. And I know some of these shows have actually went on hiatus until the new year. We'll probably do that probably the week before the holidays, the official Christmas holiday. We'll probably put a hiatus on for about 2 or 3 weeks. But we apologize for the kind of like back and forth, like, why is there no show? And
I think it would be, I don't know. We should, if we know, just saying, hey, folks, we should put out a tweet or something on the social medias or something saying, hey, we're not gonna be around this week or something. I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I think. Obviously, I think it's safe to say next week we'll probably be off, and then we can do the show the week after, which we can talk about the nominations, and we can talk about whatever remaining Oscar movies there are. So we can talk about Nightmare Alley and West Side Story, because we'll be able to see those by that point.
Do you think? I'm hoping.
That's December 3rd. That next show. So it's moving right along. We're going to be in December very soon.
I haven't gotten anything for West Side Story yet.
Well, West Side Story, you're coming as my +1. You must not have been checking your email.
That's right. That's right. No, that's what you said. No, I'm sorry. Hey, I've had a busy week too. I had a guest in town. So my mom was in town, and she hasn't visited LA in over 5 years, and I haven't seen her in almost 2 years. So it was a nice big visit, which you snubbed her, by the ways, and I took note to tell her, but she has no idea who you are. So she's like, oh, okay. She says, oh, okay. She's like, oh,
just invite her to the award ceremony. She can come to the ceremony and she can see.
Oh, sure, she'll fly out just for that. Yeah, I'll have her fly out.
Why not?
I
wish I could share a funny story on the air about how I reached out to someone to be at the award ceremony and what the list of requests were in order to be at the ceremony, but I cannot say that. Otherwise, I would be.
Tell me off the air, though.
Yes, I
tell me off the air.
Yes,
okay. And then I'll tell the story, and you won't be in trouble.
Yeah. All right. So Demetri wants to do. We're gonna do this because we want to focus on movie reviews because there's so many movies coming out. But Demetri, as always, he's sort of the news nut of the two of us, and especially when it comes to the industry insights. So, Demetri, what's been going on in the industry this past week?
Well, two of the big stories was Netflix now in trying to pretend and showcasing transparency. They announced that they're going to be expanding their viewing data and releasing their viewing data on a weekly basis. Now, that would give some decent pause and to go think about it and go, hey, yay, finally we're going to get some some data coming out of Netflix because they keep their cards close to their vests. And so who's going to be providing this? Is it going to be Nielsen? No. Is it going to be RentTrack? No. ComScore, any of these people who do like ratings? No. Who's going to do it? Netflix. Netflix, in being transparent, is going to provide their own numbers. Scott, you sent me a story at the beginning of the week. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing so hard. It's hard to get the words out. About what's it called? Red Notice. What was the Rock movie called?
Yeah, the Red Notice. Red Notice.
Yeah, Red Notice had the highest gross of any Netflix movie, as reported by Netflix. So they're going to continue to report on their own their own stuff. So as far as their transparency goes, well, they can say pretty much whatever they want. I liken Netflix, Scott, because I know you've gone to Vegas. I liken Netflix to a Vegas billboard. Because when you're driving through Vegas, you see all these voted number one restaurant on the Strip, voted number one show on the Strip. Everything that you see on a billboard in Vegas is like number one on the Strip. And who comes up, like, how can everything be number one? Well, it's because the restaurant says they're number one and they're paying for the ad. So this is basically what Netflix is doing. And it's like, oh, here's our top 10. So, hey, I just found it kind of funny that they think that this is being transparent, but it's rather still opaque, being that you have to trust in what Netflix is saying. Much like when you log on to Netflix and you get, hey, this is what's trending on Netflix, and what's trending on Netflix on my television, Scott, ends up being very different than what's trending on Netflix on your television. So
yes,
how is it actually trending on Netflix if we're getting two different content, so to speak? So anyways, I found that to be that was one of the big stories to come out this week.
And I mean, listen, it's funny because I think they can put out like their most popular list. I think if they were just doing something like that would be fine. I mean, you're right. I mean, I've even, there was a period of time where me and Ashley both had our individual Netflix accounts. And like we would log on and one on the other, and there would definitely be different things in the trend.
Yeah. Sure.
So like I don't understand that, but I know for a long period of time there, at least like back in the early days, there was an idea that it was tailor-made for you. But we all know that that's not the case, because whenever something comes up that I would want to watch, I have to search for it. As the example I gave about like a John Mulaney special or a Bo Burnham special or something that like I would go after, or Atypical not coming up for the last season, even though that I have been a very big fan of that. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't even full transparency, I don't actually even understand the logic of this.
I don't
either. Because it's kind of like,
well, I do understand the logic, but go ahead.
What's the logic of it?
What's the logic of like announcing that they're going to be releasing their top 10?
Yeah, because
what's the logic behind that?
If you're going to do something and you're going to be honest about it, okay? So listen, here's the thing. Again, Red Notice I can buy. Like I can buy that being in the number one spot or in the top 10 because of it's an action movie, it's comedy, it has really notable actors.
But didn't it say box office, that article?
No, it wasn't box office. No.
Are you sure? Let me go find it, because
oh wait, you're saying that the article is saying that it's going to have a top 10 in the box office?
Biggest opening day in Netflix film history. Now, what does opening day mean? Like, you don't have an opening day on Netflix, so to speak. When nothing opens, they post it. It's streaming. It's not an opening day per se. I mean, you see, this is where Netflix really muddles the waters, and this is what I guess kind of troubles me and bothers me and irks me the most. Like, they want to play in the sandbox, but yet they play by their own rules. So when you have an opening day, to me as a moviegoer and as a movie reviewer, opening day means, hey, Ghostbusters Afterlife opens today. Today's opening day. If you want to include Thursday night previews, yeah, you could say that that technically is opening day. But when something shows up on TV, did you ever see any network say, hey, it's opening day for, like, opening day baseball is broadcast, but that's a live event. So, yes, but did you ever see a network who's broadcasting a television movie? Hey, it's opening day for Bill Maher today. No, you don't see that. So the way I read biggest opening day in Netflix film history, what does that mean, and why, and how does that happen, and who's saying it's the biggest opening day in Netflix compared to what? um they never release those numbers, and to me, this is what irks me most, is that they want to be considered a studio, yet they don't want to play by the rules, period. They want to just do their own thing. We as reviewers go out there and say, "Hey, they're eligible. They have great performances," and I say, "No, they really don't, because they're not playing in the same sandbox as everybody else. They're not adhering to a 45-day window. 9 out of 10 times, if you're going to a movie theater, their movies are not being advertised as opening in theaters. They're just not. So." They should just take streaming. I will not begrudge them if they opened up Red Notice, if they opened it up to a regular theatrical window of 45 days, and then after that we're going to be on we're going to be on Netflix, we're going to be on our streaming service. They don't want to do that. So when you're reporting your own numbers, you could pretty much say whatever you want, and I guess this has all been muddled from basically, our past 4 years, where we've had people say, hey, we're doing this and this, and just because they're on TV or just because it's in print now, to me it makes me more skeptical, because we're not getting real numbers. So yeah, I'm looking at your post and it says biggest opening day in Netflix film history, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, of course it's the biggest opening day. Of course they are. They get to tout whatever they want. Um, just like I get to tout that Hollywood Critics Association's Trending in Hollywood is the biggest and best podcast about the movie industry. Where do I get that information from? Well, who cares? I say it must be true. And you know what, though, Scott? It is true. It's true. That's all there is to it. Yes. Don't you disagree with me? It's true. We are the best at what we do for the industry and for movie reviewing, because it's an honest take. So yes, I say we're the best. We're not shills. We will give an honest opinion, and we'll talk about the news, such as the other big news this week. See how I segued?
There you go. That was smooth like
almost, almost professional. The other big news is that STX Entertainment is in sale talks after they had a turbulent merger with Eros. Now, when I told this news to you, you kind of chuckled and you're like, oh, big surprise. But my comment was, yeah, I am surprised that it took this long. I am surprised that it's taken this long for STX to be up for sale. They were a studio, a little indie, a mini major, I'll just call STX. They've had some success here and there with some of their features. They've had not so much success, but they're the little engine that almost could. It's the little engine that would and could if it tried, maybe. I like the fact that there's an STX out there. But this sale makes 100% sense to me. And I'm just going to be curious as to who will be kicking the tires for STX. I don't want to see STX go away because I think for the film business, I think that'll be a bad sign. It'll be a bad signal. I would like STX in one way, shape, or form to be able to continue to distribute movies. I think they need some better movies. They need a better distribution patterns and releases to do it. Obviously, a sale would give them more money, but I think taking them out of the picture completely, that would be a bummer because I think we've lost so many. We need these little mini major independents to kind of like give us they have to give some variety to the plethora of like superhero movies and the such, and that's what STX was a part of. Lionsgate used to be that way, but now they're just releasing Drek. It's like I can't, there's spots open, and we can't just rely on the neons of the world. We need other bigger support because people, I think a bubble can potentially burst if all the big movies are just necessarily franchise pictures or superhero movies, which we get a glut of. So I think that's really big news. The other big news, talking about reorganization, is that Paramount we talked about a few weeks ago, Scott. Remember when I believe his name was Brian Robbins, who headed Nickelodeon? Well, he was given the keys to the car, and he now is running Paramount Studios. He has, while he's directed movies, he's younger. He understands the streaming aspect. He understands the family aspect because running Nickelodeon. But I don't know. He's making these big changes within Paramount, and there seems to be a focus on Paramount Plus. Well, this past week they just let go of 44 people within the distribution and marketing department, and that's a signal too. Not a positive one. I don't know what Paramount's doing. Um, I think you'll agree with me, Scott, and those who are listening and watching. Paramount, after they lost Marvel, after they lost Lucasfilm, um, they kind of were in a tailspin. They lost a lot of their big earners. They've had some success, Quiet Place, some of their animated family films have done okay, but a lot has not worked for Paramount. And they lost, they were never really given this chance to kind of regroup.
Yeah.
So, Paramount was they were a major contributor. They're a major motion picture studio. They don't know how to do Star Trek. They've kind of like almost given up on theatrical Star Trek. And I'm sorry, I don't think they have enough subscribers. I still don't understand why. I don't get, like, to me, Star Trek should be on their network, like their network, whether it be CW or something. But Paramount Plus just ain't doing it, and I don't care. Subscribership to me these days is kind of like an Instagram follower. Oh, that Instagram follower is got a 25 million. Well, I don't know about them. So I guess I don't. 25 million is a lot of people. I don't know how many subscribers Paramount Plus has. So I don't think it's like I don't know what Paramount's doing, but their focus on theatrical releases obviously is becoming a little bit of fuzzy around the edges, and it's sad to me.
I think on the Paramount front, I think they've been on a sinking ship for a while now, and I think the pandemic, only the strong will survive the pandemic. I think that's sort of the lesson that we're learning here. You brought up STX, and I literally, their biggest movie was Bad Moms.
But Hustlers, was it called Hustlers?
Hustlers did
Did
okay. I
okay.
mean, it was the
Yeah,
first time other than Molly's Game where they had a potential awards contender, right? It was
yes.
that movie and Molly's Game that kind of
Yep.
gave them a little bit more cachet in the industry. But
Yep.
of course, what the struggle is that they didn't have the marketing budget. And as we
No.
know for awards, I mean, you really have to put so much money. And I think we talked about this on the last show. An awards campaign for a movie sometimes is more than the budget of that said movie.
Of the movie,
I
yeah.
mean, so it's really kind of funny. So when you have a movie like Spencer that probably costs like $5 to $10 million, and then
Yeah.
you look at like what all the push that Neon's doing for that film with ads and Variety and Hollywood Reporter, the TV spots, the online ads, making Kristen Stewart do like 17 world travels, travels around the world. These people don't
Pardon
fly
me.
regular airplanes. They don't fly in regular coach tickets. They don't go, oh, Southwest has a sale today for 59 bucks. Let me put her on there. She's getting paid like, like this each seat's costing like $1,000 probably on average every
Right.
time she jumps on a plane somewhere. And then you're not talking about the 4 or 5 star hotel she's going to be in, which is another
Right.
$500 to $600 a night at minimum.
Right.
So, like, people got to realize that the numbers add up. But when you go to these studios, I mean, and both of them are really been struggling. I mean, STX and Paramount hasn't had an awards contender either. I
No.
mean,
No, they
they
haven't.
tried to push Quiet Place, the first one. I remember that. I mean, there was a big
Right.
campaign. They really went all in. I went to an event. It's actually where I met Jazz, I believe, in person for the first time. Um, it's crazy. And I know they're
Mhm.
trying to do like a small push for it, the second one now. I mean, to me, save your money. I mean, save your money.
Yeah.
There's no point. As much as I love the movie, you have way too much competition right now. No one's looking at Quiet Place. I hate to say it.
No.
Just
No.
let it go. But this is an ongoing issue within the industry, is that you're seeing so many of these major studios sell off product. I
Yep.
mean, we've seen, obviously Sony has been selling animated films that, to me, traditionally would have done very, very well. Mitchell's versus the Machines, one of my favorite movies of the year, is now a Netflix baby. And then you
Right.
have Hotel Transylvania, which, I mean, I've grown very tired of this franchise, but it has a very loyal fan base, and the movies do very well in the movie theater. And yet we see this dumping off. We've seen Coming to America get dumped. We've seen so many, Tomorrow War, which Amazon is actually greenlighting. So they're just, everyone is pawning off a lot of this stuff, and it's
Yeah,
making
I
me
agree.
really worried about the state of these studios.
Yep.
Because the
Yeah,
one thing that we don't talk about on this show, we can't talk about it today, but we should really do a conversation about it, is the looking at the stock market, and how
no.
Netflix, as much as we bitch and moan about Netflix and their transparency and their movies who are watching this, their stock market numbers
Yeah.
are insanely high. They're
Yeah, they
higher than
pop.
Disney. They're higher than Paramount. They're higher than most of them.
No, and I get that. To your point though, and something that we were talking about, we did already lose a studio this year.
Yeah.
We lost the studio that released the Road Rage movie with Russell Crowe. They're gone.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so funny. They were
Solstice,
around for
Solstice,
solstice. Yeah, they were around for
short of
such a
time.
short period of time, and I mean, they thought that was going to be a big thing. I mean, talk about another one, wrong time, wrong place kind of thing, right? Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely.
they're like,
And
they followed the Quibi model. Like other things have come out
right.
since Quibi, and they survived somehow. And you kind
Yeah.
of wonder.
Yeah. But the loss of Solstice bummed me out. This is why I don't want to see STX go. But Paramount, when you think of Paramount too, the only thing they really have left is they got Top Gun, right? They got Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible. So, but this was a studio of grandeur, you know. This is a studio that released The Godfather, that released Forrest Gump. These are all contenders, obviously. Chinatown. And I know I'm going back some years, but if you want to, this is the studio Beverly Hills Cop, Flashdance. Like, you could look at the film history of Paramount Pictures, and they were always a top contender, and they always released blockbusters. Not every picture, no studio. I'm sorry, like, Disney's a blockbuster because they have Marvel. That's it. If you take Marvel away from Disney,
no, you take the three brands that they pretty much bought away from
right.
Disney. They don't really have much anymore. I mean, they literally have three of the biggest brands in history, right? They have Pixar, which was a dynamite for animation. They have Lucasfilm, which they got the whole kind of shebang with that. And of course, they have Marvel Studios, which is pretty much everything anyone could want in terms of superhero fare. So
yeah, it's a monopoly almost.
You take those things away. I mean, what do you have left?
Right.
I mean, that's it. And then when you add in the fact that they now own
Fox,
20th Century Studios, and all these different divisions and Searchlight. I mean, it's only a matter of time. Listen, they're always going to keep the awards with Searchlight, right? We know this.
I mean, it's not as
this is my prediction on this. I think that Searchlight for most of the year is going to be a genre horror release thing because they're cheap to produce. A lot of people go see them. And then I think they're going to narrow it. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be 2 or 3, but they're going to always still have like that because that name means so much to the industry. Searchlight.
Fox Searchlight. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But those movies, some of those movies end up doing really well in spite of them.
I know. Like, yeah.
I mean, and a great example of that we talked about was Free Guy, right?
Right.
So, look, I don't know what's going to happen at Paramount. I really don't. I still think that they're in a tailspin. They need to start to level off if they're going to survive theatrically. That's one thing, but I think that they're in this mode. Everybody's in the mode of bolstering, your Plus service, your Disney Plus, your subscribership. I don't think Paramount necessarily, you release day and date. It's almost like how Universal released Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's going to be on, what was it? Hulu. Wait, what was it on? Oh, Peacock Plus. It's like Peacock Plus has like 5 subscribers. I'm being facetious, but that's not going to really ding into box office. It's only when you start getting into like Disney stuff that could actually affect box office. And again, I don't know what Paramount's doing. But anyways, that was the other big news that came out this week. None of it really was fantastic for the movie, for the studio, industry, to be honest. So yeah, and then we've seen a couple of movies this past week.
We're gonna do it real quick because we're not gonna have a show next week, and we can't go too in depth about this. But there's been a lot of social media reactions, and we're gonna start with this, and it's gonna kind of be like a short and sweet, like probably about a minute each, just because we want to stay within like a social media reaction of this movie, House of Gucci. And we're gonna leave with that, and then we're gonna end with Ghostbusters, just because I feel like that's the one we're gonna talk about the most. So Demetri, I'll let you go first because I know this is fresher in your mind and you just saw it. In a minute, what is your initial reaction of House of Gucci?
Well, to me, House of Gucci is bargain basement at best. And bargain basement, add to that, find on the slightly irregular rack at like Marshall's. It's riddled with awful and at times laughable performances, some of the worst I've seen this year. Very surprising considering who's in this movie. and I found I found some of the performances to be variety show caricature. They were very unlikable characters, and I wondered, how did Gucci ever become such a symbol of status, especially in the '80s? Um, so to quote one of those characters, Paolo Gucci, as played by Jared Leto, which we have to talk about, and Lady Gaga for that extent. But he has a speech where he talks about the difference between shit and chocolato. Well, I can tell you what I learned is House of Gucci ain't chocolato. So
All right. So, listen, I felt this movie, just to pretty much quote my tweet. I mean, it's a total mess. It's uneven. It's all over the place. Every actor feels as though they're in a different movie. Some of them don't even know that they're in the same movie. Um, there you go from performances like Lady Gaga at times where I feel like there's moments in this performance where she seems to understand what she's doing, and then there are other times it takes the shift where it goes from this really campy over the top to this really serious and dark tone, and I'm like, what just happened? And to me, I feel like Driver is just Driver. He's like sleepwalking through this role. He's there, he's fine, but he's just like one note during the entire movie. Jared Leto feels like a cartoon character come to life, and I realize that this is based on a real life character, but it's so over the top and ridiculous that like it's amusing, but I'm like, what is this? And then I mean, you have Jeremy Irons just phoning in a performance. Well, Selma Hayek was a couple weeks ago. I hinted at she was in another movie where she was completely wasted. This is the movie I was talking about. And I mean, and then you have poor Al Pacino, who seems to be the only one who kind of understood. He's campy in the beginning when he needs to be serious. He's serious in a great. I think the boardroom scene of signing over the company, I think is probably the best scene in the movie.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. But I think you actually, though, Scott, and I'm going to give you credit for this. You summed it up best. I mean, this is a movie, right, that has a fascinating, insane story behind it. You have this woman, this gold digging, manipulative woman who might have mafia ties. It's hinted, like from
Yeah.
she works for a family. She gets herself into this Gucci family, starts manipulating everything. Right? You've got backstabbing, betrayal after betrayal. This is all within a family. You have soothsayers, so to speak. What do they call them? What do they call, like, Madame Leota? Uh, what are those women? What are those people called?
Gypsies you're talking about?
Like, no,
Like
not gypsies, but the people with the crystal balls and stuff.
psychics,
Like,
psychics.
yeah, psychics and assassins, right? I mean, we don't have creative enough writers or imaginative enough writers to make this stuff up. This is supposedly true, and yet this movie made it seem so uninteresting, like, every step of the way. And I just, like, by the end of it, I was like, okay, wow, it really did a disservice, and it really, to me, really hurt the Gucci brand for whatever it's worth today. Anyways, but yeah, that's House of Gucci for you.
There you go. All right,
Snoochie Gucci's.
Moving
Oh,
on to
oh,
another United Artists movie. They're really. I feel so bad. Like, I mean, they had Cyrano, which I loved, and like I feel like they're not doing any marketing pushes at all. And then they had Licorice Pizza and House of Gucci, and of course Bond. We already talked about Bond. Let's jump into Licorice Pizza.
you can go first.
I'll
How
go
long ago
first.
did
All
you
right.
see this movie?
So real quick, again, there's not really much to say about this movie, in my opinion. It starts off pretty good. I mean, I was invested for about 45 minutes. I think And for me, that's great because a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson movies, I know he has a huge fan base and people love him no matter what he does. To me, he's a very hit or miss director. I mean, obviously, Boogie Nights, Magnolia are movies that I appreciate more than I love, but I can understand why people do like those movies. And I would say that those are like his strongest moments. And then, of course, you have the Daniel Day-Lewis movies that he has. Again, he's an acquired taste. Some may say, and I would be one of them, who would call his work very, very pretentious. So it was very interesting to see Licorice Pizza because the first 45 minutes play out very much like a Dazed and Confused or a Everybody Wants Some, something like where a very broy type movie where it's kind of like this love story between this kind of like, I wouldn't say he's a cool kid. He kind of seems like a little bit of an outcast, but he kind of has swagger to him, and he thinks he's a lot
Self-assured.
cool. Yeah, he's a little bit. He feels like he's a little bit cooler than he really is, and he has this crush on this photographer who is played by Elena Haim. And I was kind of in it for a little bit with the relationship. I like the chemistry between the two. I think both of the performances are good enough. I think they're strong first-time performances. And then the movie starts going off the rails and just goes aimlessly like down these tracks of introducing characters and Sean Penn doing crazy things and Bradley Cooper as like a coked out like love addict or something. I have no idea.
He's supposed to be Peter Goober.
I know he's Peter Goober.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just the whole movie feels aimless. And like Demetri and I were talking about this yesterday. There's this really great scene where Elena is driving this moving truck. And I wish I can say like, wow, this was like a great scene if it was in a different movie because it's so well shot and captured. But when I'm watching it, I'm like, why is this here? It makes no sense. And that's all I kept thinking to myself after 45 minutes was, what is happening? Why? And when is this going to end?
Yeah. I mean, for a 2-hour and 13-minute movie, it felt longer. I was looking at my watch a lot. And I pretty much feel the same way you did. In fact, it was really funny that you brought up Dazed and Confused because I felt the first half hour, 45 minutes of the movie had a Richard Linklater kind of charm to it.
Yeah.
I was kind of buying the relationship, but at the same time not buying it. I mean, we're going to have to talk about some things here that I don't understand how people are giving it a pass on certain things. And the audience that I watched it with too, I would have to say about 50% of them, if not a little more, were definitely Paul Thomas Anderson fans. But yes, I agree with you. It was kind of had that Richard Linklater kind of charm. It had a through line narrative that was going along, and I was buying into it. I was getting into it because of the characters, because of the performances. But I would say right around the time when we start getting into the selling of waterbeds, and then when Sean Penn's character shows up, then the movie goes into the Paul Thomas Anderson territory. And I'm going to say in my review is like, for all the reasons that people love him and for the reasons that people hate him or dislike him, I'm in the latter category. This is why he goes off on these nonsensical, narratively challenged parts of this movie that had nothing to do with the story. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Why am I watching this? Why do I care for characters who come in a movie? To me, it was just to showcase, hey, Sean Penn agreed to do my movie. Now I have to write something for him to do. And he does it, and then he's off screen. Same thing with Bradley Cooper. And I really felt it took away from what you built to be a charming, maybe romantic comedy that you knew was going to have its challenges. But I have to talk about this too because the lead actor the boy, whose name I forget, but his character
Cooper Hoffman.
Cooper Hoffman, he's 15 years old, right? He's a child actor in California, and apparently he has a little bit of cachet. Um, he's self assured. He's fun to watch, but he's 15, and this girl is 25. She's 25 years old, and I'm like, wait a minute, no, that how is that going to fly? How does that fly? We have teachers who like have gotten fired, get thrown into jail for having relationships with students that are 15 and they're 25. Here we are. It's like that that doesn't fly. I cannot see a woman of 25 wanting to go out and date a 15-year-old boy in
Well,
high
I mean,
school, which
listen,
she's graduated from college.
that's the thing that I will that part of this is where I'll give the movie a pass, because I'm looking at it from the 70s time period. And I mean, not that it makes sense that a 25-year-old girl would be hanging out with a 15-year-old kid. That makes no sense. Like
even in the 70s,
the other way around, like a 15-year-old kid wanting to spend time with a 25-year-old makes sense. But
that's where you get your crushes.
The reversed makes no sense.
It makes no sense, and there's just no way that like no like. You got to figure that girl's parents, if they found out that he was 15, they'd be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, but hey, it's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. He can do whatever he wants. Oh, okay. This seems natural and normal. Okay. You know, people get arrested for this kind of thing in certain states, but no, not here. It's all well and good. To me, I found it to be kind of off-putting and a kind of uncomfortable. Again, performances were strong, and it was the only reason I actually hung around at the movie. Plus, I was in a movie theater. So, but my other thing, Scott, you and I talked about.
Yes.
And this one, I tweeted about this last night, and it is really funny. It still got crickets on the tweet, but there is some stereotypical racist Asian things going on in this movie, in two scenes in particular, that when they happened, it was so jarring. And it was just it was what is happening? Like, what is going on? And nobody is talking about this. Nobody is like saying, what the hell is wow? Nobody's upset about this. At least I have yet to see.
No one's upset about it. It's I don't know. It's weird because they've been screening it every single night for like the past like 2 weeks straight, and I'm amazed that somehow the movie has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Granted, it only has 25 reviews, and no one in the time of where we gaslight everything, anything that comes out, anything that's been said, if something is like casting does not feature a person of color, we basically cry like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And yet there are two scenes in this movie where there is a horrible, awful white man talking what I guess is either Chinese or Japanese.
It's an Asian accent.
Some sort of Asian accent that is so friggin' offensive. And by the way, does not need to be in the movie at all. Makes no point to being in the movie. And yet no one is saying anything about this. I don't understand.
No, and yet, you know, when it comes to a movie like In the Heights, we'll complain about the people's like shade of color who background. But yet in this movie so far, and you're right, Scott, they've been screening the hell out of Licorice Pizza. No, I haven't heard and or read anything about this. And again, look, you know, I have a thicker skin than most when it comes to being offended, right? I'm just looking at this from a hypocritical standpoint.
Yes.
You can't go raising red flags and complaining about people's shades of color or how this person was depicted or how this person was cast because, you know, oh, why didn't you hire, you know, somebody from the LGBTQ? People seem to forget that it's called acting, number one. And so, like, you know, Nobody would say Patrick Stewart is gay, but he's played a gay character and he's done it very well. Nobody complained. It's called acting. So you got to find somebody who can play the part. They don't have to be LGBTQ to be an actor or an actress to play a part like that. All right, that aside, if you're going to complain about all that stuff, you got to complain about this. Because it really was cringeworthy when it happened, because we become so sanitized. And when this white character did it, and he's an actor we've seen in those like Waiting for Guffman movies and stuff. He's a very funny comedic actor, but it had no place in this movie whatsoever. And again, I do not buy the argument that it was it was of its time. No, I'm sorry
no, that doesn't make any sense, because first of all, it doesn't need to be in the movie. That's the bottom line of what makes that so unacceptable. Even if they want to try to act like that, there's no reason. It's literally like offensive just for the sake of being offensive. It doesn't tie in the plot. There's no reason for it to be there.
No, and it just, like, again, it was so jarring. I just was, and Paul Thomas Anderson doubled down. He had another scene where the character does it again.
Yeah, like, and that character is played by John Michael Higgins, who's a character actor who's very, very famous. Like he said, he's been in a lot of the Christopher Guest movies.
Yeah,
he was in he's in the Saved by the Bell remake. I mean, I normally like that guy. I felt bad for him in this, because I was like, wow, they really gave you that, like that, and that's the only thing he does in this movie, right? He's only in two racist scenes. He's never in anything else.
Well, he's in
one other scene.
No,
right.
No. It's the same. No, he's in two scenes. No, you're 100% correct. He's in two scenes. One at the one that's in an office, and the other one's in the restaurant.
Yeah,
because So I don't get it. The movie angered me. I said this to you, like, had I like, I didn't like House of Gucci. Both these movies earn the finger from me. They get the one finger out of 5. But had I been given links or like a screener to watch these movies, I can honestly say that I would have at least watched House of Gucci from beginning to end. I would have, like, I would have angered, but I would, I'd stick through it. Had I gotten a screener of Licorice Pizza, I probably would have stopped watching, because it was going literally nowhere and I couldn't figure it out. But it's the Paul Thomas Anderson effect. A reviewer friend of mine from Boston once said it best. Paul Thomas Anderson's the only person who gets to film his first drafts. And that's it. Like, there does not appear to be any script change, and nobody appears to, like, be able to read his scripts and say, hey man, what the hell's going on here? Like, why? Well, why is this important to the pushing this story forward? To me, this was as pretentious, and I was not a fan of Magnolia. But this movie, no. And, I will not be, like, checking off any boxes for any consideration. As strong as the two kid leads were, it's just not going to get any love from me. Same with Gucci. And just one thing too about Gucci, I blame most of Gucci's failures on Ridley Scott.
I do too.
He's the guy. He's got to corral these actors and performers, right? And he just didn't do a good job. He needs to take, like, he should probably take a siesta. Like, he should go on vacation. He's been really busy, and God bless him for the energy that this guy has, and for the output that he's still doing. But I think the output is kind of faltering, and a lot of people are saying, nominations for your consideration, Gucci. They're saying the same thing about Licorice Pizza, and I say, nay.
All right, real quick, I'm going to give, we got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to run through real quick. I got to see Don't Look Up last night. This is the latest film from Adam McKay. It's a social satire, both political and social media satire. And I have to say, outside of the fact that the movie is about 15 minutes too long, I think this is probably the best Adam McKay has been in a very, very long time, and it might actually be his best movie. Yeah,
Really?
I mean, I was just so into this movie, and I think it's because we have a bunch of actors playing a bunch of characters that we would never traditionally see them playing. Okay, so we have Jennifer Lawrence, who I think for the longest time has been really kind of touted as this very serious actress with, like Silver Linings Playbook, and I mean even in the Hunger Games, Joy, and all this stuff. She's never really had a chance to really show the comedic side to her, and she plays this millennial in here who discovers that a comet is coming to Earth. She's very passive aggressive. She's kind of like almost like an emo type. And I just love seeing this negative Nancy portrayal by her. And then Leonardo DiCaprio, who we normally, see him as just like the heartthrob, the hunk, kind of having the glasses and like the nerdy, like anxiety all the time. And like he can't get his words out. And it's funny seeing him do this again. It's almost like he's playing a mockery of like his, he's a very big advocate for like global warming and a lot of causes, and he's sort of like making it like almost like a little bit of a mockery. Like he still makes sense, like you're still like this character, you're listening to him, but he's having fun with it, right? He's kind of doing like what the South Park guys would have done with a Leonardo DiCaprio character.
Gotcha.
And sort of like embracing it. Like, so he still makes really great points in the movie, and you really kind of like, you root for the character, but at the same time, you're like, I can't believe Leonardo DiCaprio's doing this. And he's just so great in it. And then you just have all these other, like Mark Rylance is basically the character from Ready Player One, but like bumped up to like 100. And he's like, so like he's like, oh, my precious, my phone, you can watch videos on it. And there's cats on it and dogs. Oh, that chicken looks too intimidating. Like, it's just, he's so like in it, and it fits the moment so perfectly. And then you have, I got to give credit, and I never thought I would say this, but Ariana Grande, I'm proud of her for what she's done, like with the philanthropy work, and she's done a lot for the community and stuff like that. But I'm not really a big fan of her music. But I will say that I give her a lot of credit for coming in this and playing like a really dumb, like pop star character that is so familiar in social media world today. And her whole thing that she did, that she has an original song in this movie called, I don't know if it's Don't Look Up or whatever, but it's something that plays into the title. And I mean, it is hilarious. It's a great song. And I can't wait for it to actually be in there in the original song category. But I just had such a fun time with this movie. I wasn't expecting it. And I gotta be honest, I watched it in a packed crowd, and it was very hit or miss, as most Adam McKay movies are. A lot of people stayed for the Q&A because obviously they touted out Meryl Streep and Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, and a lot of people stayed. But I can just tell, like, there was times where me and a few others were like really laughing, and you can hear it, but they were like really just like pockets of laughter. Like, it's like, here's 5 people laughing here, here's 10 people laughing here. A lot of it was kind of like, oh, okay. And one last thing, because Meryl Streep, because Meryl Streep is Meryl Streep. I think it's so great to see Meryl Streep playing such a bold character like this. She's basically the female version of Trump in this movie, and she is having the time of her life. And I cannot believe this, but there is actually a Meryl Streep nude scene in this movie.
Wow. And that got you going?
Random nude scene you will probably see all year.
And that got you going?
Wow. Was also nude in this movie, just to give you that too.
Will do. When does this show up on Netflix?
It's a Christmas release.
Oh,
It's a
I have to
Christmas
wait till
release.
Christmas.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, I think they're
man.
doing screenings soon. I mean, I think they're doing screenings next week. I'll send you some links for it so you can check it out. All right, so Demetri, let's try to go through this real quick. I know we didn't get to
Yes.
talk about this. Go
Yes.
ahead, share.
All right. Well, of all the movies that I watched this week, I have to say, thank God for Ghostbusters Afterlife. It was a palate cleansing movie for me. The movie, I've had high hopes for this, and this movie, I was bathed in an ectoplasmic nostalgia that didn't necessarily feel forced. There were wonderful, beautiful Easter eggs if you're a Ghostbusters fan. Um, but the nostalgia wasn't just of Ghostbusters. It was an homage almost to the way movies were made back in the 80s. Because let's be real, Scott, if Ghostbusters were to show up on a creative executive's desk today, it most likely would not have been made.
I would
Period.
agree.
So I really enjoyed the movie. The movie was a lot of fun. It did harken a lot of that kind of feel to it, that charm of those movies of the 80s, the types that Steven Spielberg would make. um of course, they were keeping this in the family. We had Jason Reitman, who directed, and he had a hand in the screenwriting. His dad, who directed he directed Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. But can we talk about this without spoiling things? I'm gonna try. um but we have to remember that the movies and how they were made and packaged in the 80s, it just doesn't exist anymore. And I believe Ghostbusters Afterlife kind of proves this, because some of the things that kind of stuck out to me is, number one, this movie is not a blending of comedy and horror and action and adventure. Why? Why? Because Ghostbusters is a funny movie. Well, we have a great cast here in this movie. We really do. And I like, and the focus is on kids, teenagers, which I get, because as a teenager watching Ghostbusters, you wanted to be a Ghostbuster. So it made sense to me that you're going to make teenagers Ghostbusters. But there's really not the comedy that we had back in 1984. Why? Because I just don't think anybody has the chops. I mean, Paul Rudd is a funny guy, but he's not a Ghostbuster in this movie, nor is he a Rick Moranis character. Um, there isn't anybody, I think, that can ad lib and do things like Bill Murray, Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis were able to put together. So this movie doesn't have that comedy, but it does have the heart and it does have action. The other thing that I noticed is this movie, unlike movies of the 80s, it didn't have a source soundtrack. If you recall, back in 1984, the Ghostbusters soundtrack was one of the hottest selling soundtracks of its time because of the music, not the score, but the music. And this one really didn't have that, albeit it does showcase a performance by McKenna Grace, who is our lead Ghostbuster in this movie. She's the smart one, the scientist, and she has a song. She performs a song, and it's very good, but it doesn't have the pop hits kind of song that the original Ghostbusters have. So those are two differences right off the bat. I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I will say, to me, there are aspects of this movie. I thought Afterlife is an apt title for Ghostbusters, for this movie. It's an afterlife of how movies were made. It's an afterlife for this series. And there were parts of it where it comes in heavy with heart. And if you were a fan like myself of watching the movies of Ivan Reitman, Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, you're going to totally understand what I said, because these people have worked together. Stripes, when you look at movies like Stripes, Harold Ramis directed Groundhog's Day. with Bill Murray. Like these people were they were a quote unquote family. And to an extent, you're bringing this family into modern day. They do a really nice job. I also have to point out, I was going to talk about the score for 1 second. I had to write this down. So you have a really good nostalgic score. And Rob Simonson did the score for this, and he has wonderful tribute to Elmer Bernstein, who did the score for Ghostbusters, right? It's the iconic score, and it's throughout the entire movie. Does a fantastic job, but I also noticed he also gets his chops from Alan Silvestri. I heard a lot of Alan Silvestri in the score. Alan Silvestri didn't have anything to do with Ghostbusters, as far as I'm aware, but you could tell that Simonson has a Silvestri influence on his score. I thought it worked perfectly for this movie. Jason Reitman's direction was on point. I thought he did a very good job in handling the action, the supernatural. I think of its criticism, people will come out and say, well, it's just the retelling of Ghostbusters. Okay, if you want to be that way, you're the same people that said the same thing about Superman Returns as it being a remake of the original Superman movie because it was a land grab movie. Yes, okay, you could call it a criticism. I went into it and like I said, I just let it wash over me and I had a really good time. The performances from the kids were fantastic and worthy of following through from beginning to end. From McKenna Grace, Tom Wolfhard, the kid who played Podcast, who is what a find that kid is. I forget his name, but um, Paul Rudd was really good, and Carrie Coons
Yeah.
as the mom, she too was really good. And again, you've already know about the cameos. Oh, I have to say, stay till all of the credits are done. You have
Yeah.
to stay to the very, very,
There's
very
two post.
end.
Yeah, there's two post
There are
credit
two.
scenes. Yeah.
And the final post credit, you know, it kind of, this is what I kind of liked about it. It kind of hints that we could potentially get more. But I also like the fact that they take from a Dan Aykroyd idea. And this isn't a spoiler. If you have any of the most recent Blu ray releases of Ghostbusters, Dan Aykroyd talks about how he wanted to incorporate Ghostbusters. It's like, why should it just be these three guys? There should be Ghostbusters not only throughout the world, but, in the universe. We have different Ghostbusters, and they seem to. There's a hint that that could be incorporated. I I really loved it. And it was so nice to see Annie Potts. It really was. I mean, yeah, as a fan of a movie, as growing up as a kid from the 80s, watching Ghostbusters and growing up with a lot of 80s movies and how they were made, this was kind of like that nice homage. I think they did a really good job. I appreciated it for that. People are going to critique it for things. That's fine. I get it. But not for me. To me, it was one of the most fun I've had at the theaters this year. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right. So real quick for me, and then I got to jump off, but I want to echo a lot of what Demetri said, but the most important thing that I wanted to touch upon that surprisingly Demetri did leave out was I loved how this
I had
was
to
a
give you
movie.
something to talk about.
I love that this was a movie that was about a family made for family, and I think that's really special because to me, the biggest takeaway of this movie was Jason Reitman and Ivan Reitman, from what I've learned, worked side by side throughout this movie. Yes, Ivan's only credited as a producer, but you can see that this whole entire story is very much a tribute to their own life, because what happens with Egon and what we learn about his past in this movie is very similar to I feel to what Jason and Catherine Reitman must have felt about Ivan Reitman throughout their childhood, about their dad kind of not being there because he was in his heyday doing stuff that he was very passionate about, and he was a trailblazer and a trendsetter for a very long time. And as a result, as a movie maker, you are not really around your family. We don't talk about this enough, that when you're an actor or a director, that you are away from family for pretty much almost 6 months to maybe a year at a time. And when you have a career as iconic as Ivan Reitman's, he was gone throughout a lot of their life. So I almost felt like this movie was probably Jason Reitman's most personal movie, because I felt like he was basically telling his dad that he was like, I understand why you did what you had to do, and now I'm following in your footsteps. And it's nice to know that he played loving tribute even to his sister by making his sister pretty much the main character in the movie, and making Finn Wolfhard's character more of the secondary character, which I took as Jason Reitman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I wanted to say about it, and that's it. If you should definitely go check it out if you're a Ghostbusters
fan. Definitely go check it out. I think it's going to be one of the most fun movies you're going to see during the Thanksgiving Day holiday. I know Encanto is coming out, and that's getting really solid. That's coming out for Thanksgiving too,
yeah,
right?
It's good,
and that's getting really solid reviews. But I was really I was very impressed too. Like, I like the transition from adults to kids, having this as kids being the Ghostbusters in a sense, because that is what they're doing. And think about Ghostbusters. It was a very popular cartoon. I mean, in a sense, it became made for kids. Because kids would dress up to be Ghostbusters for Halloween and things like that. So I appreciated that they gave chance to these kids. It is a family film, and I like that they kept it in the family, and I think it gives proper tribute to the people who needed to be given tribute to. But again, these people were a part of my life as a moviegoer, whether they were in Ghostbusters or they directed movies or they were in movies like Stripes. I don't know. I walked away. I felt really good, and I want to see the movie again because I had a lot of fun. So it definitely will rank in my top 10, because for me this is the year of entertainment, and I'm starved for really good entertainment that can affect me and I can have a good time at. So
I agree. Well, Demetri, have a good Thanksgiving. I mean, obviously, I will be talking to you before that, and text messages and phone calls. But everyone watching, thanks for watching. Have a good Thanksgiving. See a lot of movies. There's plenty of stuff to pick from right now. So you got Belfast, you got Spencer, you got Ghostbusters, you got Encanto. There's plenty of good stuff out there. So
isn't Red Notice? Red Notice? I'll even promote Netflix if you're home.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, watch some movies there too at home. So thanks all.
Have a good one.
Eat a lot. Bye.
Bye.